Hello and welcome to Simply Balanced, the podcast where we dive into, all things balanced. I'm your host, Taylor Grasso, a registered dietitian with a passion to helping you find your unique balance girl aesthetic in this often hectic world. Each episode will explore different facets of living a balanced life, whether it's unraveling the latest nutrition trends, discovering mindful eating strategies, or discussing tips for a balanced lifestyle that fits your routine. Balance isn't about perfection, it's about making choices that feel right for you, nurturing your body and mind, and enjoying life's simple pleasures. So whether you're sipping your morning coffee, heading out for a walk, or winding down for the evening, I'm thrilled to have you join me. So let's dive in and talk, all things balanced. Hello, besties, and welcome back to another episode of Simply Balanced. As always, thank you so much for being here and thank you for tuning in. This week's topic might be potentially a little bit controversial. I really wanted to talk about the rise of weight loss drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, because I think that there's a lot of information that I'm seeing on social media that we just really need to have an open discussion about. And I am going to talk about the potential benefits, but I'm also going to talk about the potential downsides that come along with these drugs. Also, just some of my kind of hot takes, I guess you could say, as a non-diet dietitian. So let's dive right on in and dissect all things weight loss drugs. So the inspiration for this episode actually came from me listening to two other podcast episodes that had very differing opinions when it comes to the rise of the weight loss drugs, Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. So the first episode that I listened to was from an individual who previously had a binge eating disorder, and she was mentioning that this is honestly the first time in her intuitive eating / recovery eating disorder journey that she has felt like her ship has been rocked in terms of the impact that the prominence of weight loss drugs has had on her specifically. And then the other podcast episode was more so like a pop culture podcast, and they were talking about how they believe that weight loss drugs should be incredibly accessible. There's something that is so beneficial, and they are something that honestly the eating disorder community shouldn't be a part of and should really stay out of, because I say we as in the fact that I am someone who has previously had an eating disorder, should not be triggered by these drugs. Now, I think both of these podcasters have valid takes in a sense, but I think that there's a lot of room for discussion here. And I also think that there's not a lot of information in the media talking about what these drugs actually are and what they actually do and how they actually impact the body. And as a registered dietitian, I have a lot of knowledge in terms of like how these drugs are actually impacting individuals, specifically because these drugs were originally created for individuals with type 2 diabetes. So I want to just give a little quick synopsis, because there are two different types of diabetes. So there's type 1 diabetes, and then there's also type 2. Type 1 is what my husband Zach has. So it basically means that you are insulin dependent. It's an autoimmune condition where your pancreas just stops working. Your pancreas is what secretes insulin. And so if your pancreas is not secreting insulin, then you're just going to have incredibly high levels of blood sugar or sugar floating around in your blood. So like when Zach got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, his blood sugar was at like 400 something, which once again, any of my nurse clients that are listening or nurse listeners, you are all going to be like, oh my God. He called me and he told me that. And I was like, do we need to go to the emergency room? And he's like, should I be more concerned than I am? They told me I don't need to come until tomorrow. And I was like, maybe just call them back and ask if we need to go to the ER to get you insulin. So that is where he is going to be dependent on insulin for the rest of his life. He has a pump that provides him with insulin at meals and then also throughout the course of the day. Now, there's also type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is typically something that actually can be reversed with lifestyle factors. So improving blood sugar balance, improving nutrient density within your diet, moving your body a little bit more, getting in more steps. These are different ways that you can actually reverse type 2 diabetes. But the reason that I wanted to give a little breakdown of those two things is because, one, I think that like when you say diabetes, a lot of people don't necessarily know that there's a difference between the two different types of diabetes. But when it comes to Ozempic, semaglutide, these drugs, they were actually originally created for individuals with type 2 diabetes. Now, I want to break down a little bit of like what this drug actually does and how it actually impacts your body. So Ozempic or semaglutide is actually a GLP-1, which is also known as a glucagon-like peptide 1. Those are a lot of big words, but essentially what GLP-1 is that it's a hormone that's naturally released from the intestines after eating. So your body already makes GLP-1. This secretion, or this, not secretion, this injection is basically simulating or mimicking the GLP-1's effects on your body. So GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic actually improve insulin secretion in response to meals and thereby aiding in better blood sugar control. So essentially what happens in terms of like blood sugar balance. I've explained this a couple of different times, but I feel like it's important to talk about here too, just in case like this is the first episode you're listening to of mine. But when you eat any sort of carbohydrate food, it does not matter what type of carbohydrate food, a cookie, an apple, all of them in their simplest form are going to break down into glucose. Now, once glucose kind of hits the bloodstream, like we said, the pancreas is then stimulated to release insulin. Insulin kind of works as like a little capturer. It goes and pulls that sugar out of the bloodstream and then transports it to the cells that it needs to. So things like your muscle, your liver, your brain. Your brain uses like 130 grams of carbohydrates per day. Your muscles are going to store glucose as glycogen and then convert that to something called ATP when you are exercising. So basically converting it over to energy when you are moving. And then any excess will be stored in the liver or in the fat tissue. That's kind of how like the breakdown of carbohydrates actually works. And so in terms of blood sugar balance, what can happen in individuals with like type 2 diabetes, for example, is where you can become insulin resistant. So your body is releasing insulin, but it's not necessarily doing its job and it's not capturing that glucose like it needs to be, which means that your blood sugar is going to be higher because it's not getting captured and put into the cells as it should be. And the reason that we're concerned about like a higher blood sugar level is one, it can really negatively impact how you feel throughout the course of the day. And then two, long-term high blood sugar levels can lead to cardiovascular disease. It can also have an impact on neuropathy. So like the nerve endings in your fingers and toes. That's why like individuals with type 2 diabetes are at higher risk for like foot sores and different things like that. So what we're trying to make sure that we're doing is balancing out these blood sugar levels more steadily so that you're not having these like constant highs and or constant rises and quick falls afterwards. So what we can do in order to kind of stop that from a nutrition standpoint is when we pair carbohydrates with protein, fat, and or fiber, that's going to help to slow down the release of that sugar into the bloodstream. That's going to help to better balance out blood sugar levels. So essentially what GLP-1 or Ozempic or semaglutide, these different drugs are doing is it's helping to mimic that GLP-1 effect so that your blood sugar is a little bit more in control and in balance because this helps to improve your insulin secretion. So if you are insulin resistant, this is something where it can be incredibly helpful. So like individuals with PCOS or type 2 diabetes. That is what this drug was originally intended for. Now, what we saw from the drug in individuals with type 2 diabetes is that people were having weight loss as a side effect. So weight loss is technically a side effect of this drug, even though it's originally since it was originally approved for type 2 diabetes and weight loss was a side effect, and now it is technically approved as a weight loss drug as well, but it started off as just being a side effect. I hope that made sense. Basically, what we know in terms of why this drug causes weight loss in individuals is because GLP-1 also acts on the brain's appetite center. So it actually reduces feelings of hunger and increases feelings of fullness. So you might hear a lot of individuals who have been on Ozempic talking about food noise. So food noise is basically the sensation where your thoughts are constantly occupied by thoughts surrounding food. So those of us who have potentially struggled with disordered eating or an eating disorder are all too familiar with food noise because it's something that's often in cohesion with those types of things. And it also oftentimes comes in cohesion with a history of restrictive dieting. Because what happens when you don't have permission or access to something? You want it that much more. So you're going to think about it a lot more when food is off limits or you're not allowed to have it. Or it can also be in cohesion with a variety of other conditions as well. But in terms of like eating disorders and disordered eating, we do see food noise associated with those a lot, and also restrictive dieting. And another reason that it can be connected to restrictive dieting is because, like I mentioned, your brain alone utilizes 130 grams of carbohydrates per day. So if your brain is not getting sufficient energy, it's going to be focused on the fact that you need more food. So a lot of the times this food noise can come from underfueling and having a negative relationship with food. But these GLP-1 drugs are going to act on that appetite center to reduce those hunger cues and increase feelings of fullness, which for most individuals is going to in turn reduce their overall calorie intake, putting you into a calorie deficit. Because what we know is that based on physiology, a calorie deficit is what is going to cause you to lose weight over time. But what we also know is being in too significant of a calorie deficit can slow down your metabolic rate over time, which can in turn lead to weight regain if normal eating patterns are resumed, if we're doing kind of like that yo-yo dieting of going back and forth in and out of restrictive periods. The second reason that Ozempic and semaglutide, they're the same thing. I don't know why I keep saying both of them, but you guys know what I mean. In terms of the other way in which this drug can impact the way in which someone eats is that it also slows down the rate at which the stomach empties its contents into the small intestine. The slower gastric emptying can actually lead to prolonged feelings of fullness, which helps to also reduce overall food intake. But we also know is with the slower gastric emptying, you may have heard individuals who were on Ozempic or semaglutide. Why do I keep doing that? Oh my goodness. You guys know what I mean though. But individuals who are on these drugs, you oftentimes will hear that they're dealing with gastrointestinal side effects. So things like nausea, bloating, indigestion, burping. A lot of that has to do with the fact that it is slowing the gastric emptying, and that is something that your body is not necessarily used to because it's not the normal rate at which your body usually does this specific thing. So that is really how these drugs are impacting individuals in terms of why people are losing weight when they are taking these drugs. Now, in terms of like the discussion that I really want to have around these drugs, I have a few different feelings. And I think two of them are kind of like my main frustrations with what I'm seeing in terms of how this drug is being administered and how it's being handled. So the first thing is that this drug should not be available at medical spas. Like, I'm just going to flat out say it. It should not necessarily be something that's being used for a cosmetic reason. And now, I also want to acknowledge that I have never lived in a larger body, and I cannot say that I understand the societal pressures that are associated with that. And I can by all means understand where someone would want to go and potentially change their body based on the way in which the media is portraying this drug and based on the way in which we unfortunately have created this dynamic of praising thinness. But in terms of overall health, because that is what my main focus as a registered dietitian is, any client that I work with, any social media content that I put out, I am concerned with people's mental and physical health. And when it comes to taking this drug for purely cosmetic reason, that is further perpetuating the obsession with thinness and the rise of heroin chic, which is something that we're seeing a lot more prominently on social media recently. And I do appreciate that most influencers and celebrities who are taking this drug are very open about it, because I do think that that at least creates the dynamic of, okay, this rapid weight loss is not something that's happening from just like a certain diet and a certain exercise program, and then those people are turning around and selling it. Like, I'm glad that that's not something that I'm seeing as being super prominent, but I'm also seeing individuals who are seemingly somewhat healthy, and they are going and just getting this drug at a medical spa to change the cosmetic appearance of their bodies. And that is where I feel a little bit more frustration in the terms of this drug was approved for weight loss for individuals who are struggling with metabolic conditions like obesity, PCOS, and type 2 diabetes. And we have now turned it into another component of diet culture. And that is something that I'm worried about in terms of young individuals, young women that are on social media, and they are seeing that if you hate your body, you can just go get a shot. That is my biggest concern in terms of doing this from a cosmetic perspective. So that's my frustration and concern number one. My second concern is that especially individuals who are just going to medical spas, are these individuals being asked if they have a prior history of disordered eating or an eating disorder? Because the reality is one of the podcasts that I listened to that kind of sparked this conversation was they mentioned that individuals of the eating disorder community should really kind of stay out of this conversation. It's not necessarily a place for us, and we shouldn't really feel triggered by this whole conversation. But I would venture to argue that we should very much be a part of this conversation. And my reason for that is because of my past history myself with an eating disorder, and also many of the women that I've worked with who have either had disordered eating or eating disorders. Where that typically starts is with dissatisfaction of their body. And because they are dissatisfied with their body because of societal pressure, they then start tracking calories, following a diet, working out more, and then it turns into an obsession, and then it turns into an eating disorder. And my concern is that when we are praising Ozempic in terms of like a cosmetic perspective, that in that slew of events, right, the dissatisfaction of the body leading to dieting or a quick fix, which then could potentially lead to an eating disorder, I'm worried that Ozempic is going to fill that blank of the diet or the quick fix, because individuals are seeing this as something that does give you that short-term weight loss result that they've been looking for, right? Like, truthfully, this is the magic pill, quote unquote, that individuals have been looking for years when it comes to weight loss. And the fact that this drug could potentially lead people down the path of an eating disorder is where I do think that individuals in the eating disorder community should be a part of this conversation. Because the reality is that any shape, size of body can have an eating disorder. You don't have to be bone thin in order to struggle with your relationship with food. And if individuals who are going on this drug, whether that's, I don't really know what questions doctors are asking. I'm hoping and praying that doctors are asking if there's a history of eating disorder or disordered eating before prescribing this drug. But my guess is that at most medical spas, that question is probably not being asked. And it's something where if an individual has struggled with these things before going on this drug, they should really meet with either a registered dietitian or a therapist to really talk about what is the reason that you truthfully want to be on this. Because if it really is to do with your health, there are other things that we can focus on outside of this drug prior to giving that a try, right? Because I think the other thing too is that what we have to continue to realize is that weight loss is not a habit, and weight loss is never going to be a habit. So when it comes to long-term sustainable success, we have to create habits around our nutrition and fitness, sleep, hydration, stress management. Oh my God, that was like a tongue twister. Sleep, hydration, and stress management. We have to create habits around those components of our lives, because that is what is actually going to create a long-term result, not to mention long-term satisfaction with your body. Because if you simply are dissatisfied with your body and go and get this drug and you do it as something that's temporary, what happens when you go off of the drug? Because what we are seeing is that a lot of individuals are gaining weight back after stopping the medication. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are not providing education for individuals who are going onto this drug. Like, if you are getting prescribed Ozempic, whether it's at a medical spa or a doctor's office, there should also be a consultation with a registered dietitian. And now I'm sure, or at least I pray, that there are some doctor's offices who are doing this, but from the majority of women that I've worked with who were either contemplating going on this drug or who had previously been on this drug, there was no referral to a registered dietitian. There was no education on nutrition, fitness, health, sleep, stress management, none of the things that I listed off. And the reality is if you don't understand those things, when you resume normal eating patterns after going off this drug, even if you lost weight, the reality that you're going to keep that weight off is probably pretty slim, because you didn't actually learn about the habits that are going to make this something that is a long-term sustainable change. And if you're truly focused on your health and not just the pursuit of thinness, then those things make a difference. Because when we're talking about health, what you eat is going to directly impact your cholesterol levels. It's going to directly impact your insulin resistance. It's going to directly impact your blood sugar balance. It's going to directly impact a lot of these things that are tied to chronic metabolic conditions. And what we know about when people are going off of these drugs is there are two things that are happening. So we talked about the mechanisms in which this drug causes you to lose weight, right? The effects that it has on appetite suppression and then increased feelings of fullness, and then also effects on the gastric emptying. Once you go off that drug, you now have nothing suppressing your appetite. You have nothing increasing your feelings of fullness, and your gastric emptying is going to go back to normal. So the likelihood that you're going to start feeling hungry again, the likelihood that that food noise is going to return is very high, especially when you are not taking the time to work on your relationship with food prior to going on this drug. Because maybe this is a hot take. Maybe it's a hot take, but it's what I believe to be true, that if people do not work to heal their relationship with food prior to going on this drug, the food noise is not going to go away. It's not. It will go away while you're on the drug, but it will resume once you go off of the drug. Because the reality is food noise is oftentimes associated with a lot of the psychological emotions and ties that we have to food and our dieting history. Where I see food noise being the most prominent are kind of twofold. One is more so like a scientific side of things, and one's more is a psychological side of things. So in terms of the scientific side of things and what we can do from a nutrition standpoint is that oftentimes when individuals don't necessarily understand nutrition and all they've ever done is yo-yo dieting, and this isn't their fault. Yo-yo diets and diets don't educate you on nutrition because they want you to continue coming back. There's a reason that the diet industry is a $7 billion industry, okay? And so this is not your fault that you haven't learned these things or the individuals on these drugs haven't learned these things. It's a matter of the way in which our society works. But when we are talking about increasing satisfaction and decreasing food noise, when we're thinking about macronutrients, right, we talked about how carbohydrates, when eaten in isolation, are going to cause that quick blood sugar spike and that quick blood sugar fall. That's going to leave you feeling dissatisfied. It's probably not going to leave you feeling very energized. And it might lead you reaching for potentially more carbohydrates or potentially, like an energy drink or a coffee, not necessarily something that is truly going to satisfy your body and provide it with the nourishment that it needs. And when looking at this, what we can do to adjust this satisfaction factor is adding protein, fat, and or fiber to our meals and snacks. Because what protein, fat, and or fiber is going to do is slow down the rate at which the glucose enters the bloodstream. This is going to lead to more satisfaction. It's going to lead to increased feelings of fullness, and it's also going to help you feel more energized throughout the course of your day. Not to mention that it's likely going to lead to a lot better blood sugar balance because you're not getting that really quick hit of a lot of glucose at once that's going to cause your body to do a really quick fall at one time. Instead, you're getting a slower trickle of that glucose into your bloodstream. Your body's able to balance that out a little bit better and more efficiently. That's what leads to that more sustained energy, satisfaction, and fullness factor. That can help to reduce food noise because you're actually getting satisfied from your meals and snacks. If you're an individual who wakes up and you're like, yeah, I'm usually not hungry in the morning, so I typically just skip breakfast. Maybe I have coffee, which is also going to suppress your hunger cues because caffeine is going to suppress your appetite. And then you're like, and then I have a light lunch. I have like a salad, maybe sometimes I skip the dressing. Sometimes I put it on there. Maybe have some protein, a little bit of chicken in there. And then like in the afternoon, I'll have maybe a protein bar, an energy drink, or a coffee because I'm feeling a little fatigued at that 3 p.m. crash. I come home, I have a small dinner, but then I want to eat literally everything in my pantry. And the reason that individual is likely experiencing food noise throughout the course of their day, you think about it, they're not getting hardly any balanced nourishment. Your blood sugar levels are out of whack. Your brain does not have a sufficient amount of energy. You're not supporting your metabolism. You're not supporting your overall blood sugar balance levels. Like, it's not something that's benefiting your body. And so you're constantly thinking about food. And then The other coin of satisfaction leads to the more psychological side of food. How do you view your relationship with food? A lot of times, if you are a chronic yo-yo dieter where you've been in and out of restrictive diet cycles for multiple years, then you get to the point of, I don't have permission or access to have that food. I'm not allowed to have it. When we have this mindset that we're not allowed to have something, that we don't have permission to have food, then the likelihood that you're going to binge or overindulge on that food and or be hyperfixated or constantly thinking about it is so much fucking higher. Like, when I was in the depths of my eating disorder, I can remember, like, if I would buy a dessert or a sweet, I would sit on my couch at night, like, watching my TV show, and it would be all I could fucking think about. Like, I would be like, oh my God, there's Thin Mints in the refrigerator. Like, I really shouldn't have those. They're not good for me. I just really shouldn't have them. And then I would be like, okay, maybe I'll just have one. Or like, maybe I'll have some Halo Top ice cream first, and then I'll have the cookie, because that will ward off the craving. You know what ended up happening? I would eat the entire pint of Halo Top. I'd likely have an apple and peanut butter to still try to suffice the craving. And then I would end up eating a whole sleeve of Thin Mints. Now, fast forward 5 years later, where I've worked on that relationship with food, I understand that I have permission and access to eat these foods whenever I want them. We have had a box of Thin Mints in our refrigerator. We bought them from Girl Scouts a couple weeks ago. And like, Zach literally the other day was cleaning out the fridge and he was like, oh, there's Thin Mints back here. Like, I totally forgot that we bought these. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I didn't even remember that we had those. And it has nothing to do with the fact of like, that the Thin Mints aren't good or that I don't still love them. It's just that I'm not hyper fixated or hyper focused on them, because I know that I have permission and access to them when I want them. Like, if there's something that sounds good, I can go to the refrigerator, I can have one or two, the craving is going to be sufficed, and I'm going to be good to go. And it's not going to be something that I overthink or feel shameful or guilty about, because food has no moral value. Food is not good and food is not bad. Food is simply more nutrient dense or a little bit less nutrient dense. And we want to learn how to balance those two things and create a more healthy and better dynamic with those foods and the way in which we view them. Because when we have a more positive, additive, gratitude relationship with food, then we have a more positive outlook when it comes to building meals, building power pack snacks. It also leads to a better confidence in yourself when it comes to fueling your body. Because when you create that more positive dynamic and relationship with food, and you also understand nutrition a little bit better, right? Like, you understand macronutrients, you understand how they benefit your body, then you have this confidence in fueling yourself. And then you have this confidence to trust in your hunger and fullness cues that you naturally have. Because the reality is when you go on these drugs, and it's going to suppress your appetite and it's going to increase your feelings of fullness, when you come off of them, you are then going to be faced with those hunger and fullness cues again. And if you don't do the work to understand how to navigate those feelings of hunger and fullness, then you're probably just going to end up back at square one. And this is something that I talk about a lot with my clients, because I think intuitive eating is something that is really fucking hard. Like, everybody's like, oh my God, it's the unconditional permission to eat. Like, I'm just gonna eat cake and cookie and pasta for every single meal. And it's like, that's not what intuitive eating is. Intuitive eating is learning to better your relationship with food for mental and physical benefit. A part of intuitive eating is gentle nutrition. Gentle nutrition involves taking care of your body to the best of your ability. And that not only means giving yourself permission and access to those yummy and delicious foods, but it also means what quantity of those foods best serves my body. Because for me, a whole sleeve of Girl Scout cookies wasn't making me feel good mentally and physically. But having 2 Girl Scout cookies, yeah, that satisfies my craving. I feel really good afterwards because I had what I wanted, but I also made sure that I had a balanced meal prior to having those Thin Mint cookies. I made sure that I nourished my body throughout the course of the rest of the day. And that's not to say that like I'm never going to have a full meal that's fully balanced. Like, the reality is you don't have to have full balance every single meal and snack. But if you're focused on that 80% of the time, the likelihood that you're providing your body with what it needs in terms of nutrition is really high. And so all of this to say, like, I just provided, hopefully you felt like that was a lot of education. And what I'm saying is, with these drugs, what I would like to see change is that if someone is getting prescribed these drugs, whether it's for a cosmetic reason or whether it's for a metabolic chronic condition like type 2 diabetes, PCOS, or obesity, I would like them to also have a referral with a registered dietitian to learn about these habits. Even better if we could, like, I don't know if referrals to personal trainers exist, but like a referral to a personal trainer to better understand how to move your body in ways that you enjoy. Even like a handout, like just something that provides you with some substantial education on how to actually learn and understand the habits of nutrition and fitness and health that are going to create long-term sustainable change for you rather than just this short-term quick fix result of weight loss. Because I will say this till I'm blue in the face, but weight does not equate to health. Weight loss does not equate to health. Like, the fact that I've had women comment on my videos before saying that they were literally in cancer treatment and hadn't told anybody yet, but they were walking around their office getting compliments on their weight loss, that's so fucked up. Like, the fact that we praise thinness to the point of people being sick with a deadly disease and praising that. And I understand that, like, the individuals didn't know any better. Like, they didn't know that person was getting treatment for cancer. But it's like the fact that we are still so hyper fixated on this thinness dynamic, that those are things that we're saying to women, is something that I find like very disheartening and a little bit scary. And not to mention, like, once again, I wanted to make sure that in this podcast, I talked about the fact that these drugs can have benefits for a variety of individuals in terms of helping with insulin resistance, in terms of helping with weight loss. Like, those are things that are very challenging. But if we also don't provide the education for nutrition and fitness and health for long-term sustainability, people are not going to withstand these results. And what I want as a registered dietitian is the fact that, like I said, I care so much about people's mental and physical health, and I want individuals to thrive long term. I want people to feel better. And I totally understand the argument that individuals who are losing weight from these drugs, they feel better. I get that. But at the same time, I want them to feel better when they come off of those drugs. And if we as a healthcare system and we as a society don't start doing the work to provide individuals with those valuable resources, then this is just going to be another mixture in diet culture. And kind of like outside of the weight loss drugs, this whole new praise of thinness and heroin chic that we're seeing. And I think there's a rise of this not only with like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro, but also with the rise in Botox, plastic surgery, tummy tucks. Like, the fact that there are 22-year-olds getting tummy tucks and masseter Botox to slim their face and lip filler. And like, I am all for, like, I said this in one of my podcast episodes recently, when I have the money, I will get my ears pinned. I will get my ears pinned. That is something that has bothered me for my entire life. It's something that I don't like it about myself, okay? I'm just going to be blatant and clear. I don't like it and I want to change it. You know what? That is okay. But the fact that we are like glamorizing all of these procedures and all of these shots and all of these things that young women think they need in order to look a certain way, in order to be accepted by society, that's something that really scares me, especially with the fact that we have young girls that are on these social media apps, and these girls that are seeing celebrities and influencers and these people that they look up to. Like, they are seeing these women change their bodies in all of these different ways to be accepted by society. And that's something that really hurts me, and it really scares me. And honestly, it makes me I want a daughter so bad, but it makes me so scared because I can do all the work I want at home with that daughter, but I can't control what she sees on social media. I can't control what girls say to her at school. I can't control what boys say to her at school. Like, these are things that I think about a lot as someone who struggled so hard with an eating disorder for so long, that it's not that I don't want people to feel better. It's not that I don't think these drugs can change people's lives. It's not that I don't think that they can help with metabolic conditions. It's that I want us to recognize that it's not focusing on mental and physical health. And that's what we should be focusing on as a society. That's what we should be talking about in terms of these drugs. That's what we should be educating on. And so I think like I'm kind of getting into the point of rambling just a little bit. And so I probably should just like wrap here in a second. But I think like my key takeaways are the fact that one, I would love more education for individuals in terms of nutrition, health, and fitness when it comes to these drugs. Two, I would love to not negate everything we've done in terms of the body positivity movement and embracing the way that we look without edits and without retouch and without changes and filters and all of these things, because a healthy woman is not a thin woman. A healthy woman is one that has a menstrual cycle every single month. Like if you're actively menstruating, a woman that poops every day, a woman that's able to regulate her body temperature, a woman that has a thriving metabolism, a woman that can feel her hunger and fullness cues, a woman that enjoys her fucking life. Because I am sorry, when I had an eating disorder, I did not enjoy my life. I lost all of my friends. I did not go out. I did not go to social events. I had a safe list of foods that I was eating. That's not healthy. Thinness does not equate to health. And that is what I want us to start to recognize. And I guess before I wrap, I did want to answer like a couple of the questions that I had. And I think a lot of them kind of came from personal trainers or individuals who are kind of in this healthcare industry. And they were like, I have a lot of people that are coming to me and they're wanting to go on these drugs. Like, what is the best way to kind of educate? And I think the best way that we can continue to approach this is just telling people exactly what I've said throughout the course of this podcast episode, is that here is how the drug is going to impact you. It's going to impact your hunger and fullness cues. It is going to impact the way in which your stomach empties its contents. That's going to increase feelings of fullness. You're not going to feel your natural and hunger fullness cues. If this is something that you're looking for as a kickstart or a jumpstart to your weight loss journey, then what I'm also going to ask of you is that you're also willing to do the work when it comes to working on your relationship with food, moving your body in ways that you enjoy, and also focusing on beneficial nutrition. That is what I would propose to these individuals or clients that are potentially wanting to work with you, who are also wanting to go on these drugs. Now, obviously, going on the drug is a very personal decision. I have not once ever told any of the women who have come to me that are like, my doctor is recommending this drug, I'm a little bit unsure, I kind of want to do this first, or, my doctor is recommending this drug, what do you think? My response is always, that's a very personal decision. That's not my decision to make. What I can do for you is I can educate you on how that drug is potentially going to impact you. I can educate you on what might happen when you come off the drug. And I can also educate you on what we can do, whether you choose to go on the drug or not, in order to benefit your health through fitness, nutrition, sleep, stress management, hydration, all of that good stuff. And I think that that's the best thing that we can continue to do when people are taking that step to reach out to us. So I know that maybe I sounded a little heated during this episode, and I'm sorry if that's the case. And I know that this is a little bit of a controversial topic, but I do think that it's a really important discussion to continue to have surrounding the rise of these weight loss drugs. And I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me and asking me questions about this. And so if you listen to this episode and you have further questions, you want to have further discussion, like, please feel free to reach out, send me a message. I'm always happy to chat further about these things. But as always, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Simply Balanced. I love you all. I am so grateful for this community and the fact that this is a part of my job. And I just love you all. And that's all I got. So thank you for listening, and I will see you next week. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Simply Balanced. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing a part of your day with me. I hope you find inspiration in our discussion and feel more equipped to embrace the balanced girl aesthetic in your daily life. Remember, balance is a journey, not a destination. It's about finding what works for you in your unique way. As we part ways, I encourage you to reflect on one thing you learned today and how you can incorporate that into your life to create more balance. Don't forget to subscribe to Simply Balanced so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed our time together, consider leaving a review or sharing the podcast with a friend. Your support means the world, and until next time, keep striving for balance, nourish your body and mind, and remember to cherish life's simple pleasures. This is Taylor Grasso signing off. Stay balanced and see you next episode.